Alright guys, I'm going to try something different here. I'm getting ready to start a fire. I don't know if this is going to show up very good with lighting. I have a little light here. So we'll see how it turns out on video. But I'm getting ready to relax here in the teepee. I don't have much set up in here yet, but thought maybe we could do some campfire stories. So I'm going to talk about some of the legends of the white people, so-called white people, right? Being here before we're told they were here, according to the Indians and some of the, what they call the, what do they call them? The folklore, right? They could never, these are things you're not going to hear probably in the history books. So we're going to talk about the Moon-Eyed People that the Cherokee tradition says were here long before the official narrative. And we're going to talk about some other legends in the North Dakota area of what those Indians say were the white people. And, you know, Thomas Jefferson is known to have been wanting, when Lewis and Clark, the official story of Lewis and Clark coming out, one of the things Jefferson supposedly was very interested in finding out was he was hoping that Lewis and Clark, the expedition, would find the blue-eyed Indians. So we're going to talk about some of that here. Let me get this fire going. All right, guys. Try to keep this a little short for you. Just touch on two different accounts of white people being here before there was supposed to be white people here, according to our official history, right? So it's funny how the more you look around and you kind of know, the more you awake to stuff and you know little breadcrumbs to look for, you can find interesting stuff. And so one of the things is a Cherokee tradition. Now, I don't know if all Cherokee believe this, but a lot of Cherokee believe this. It's kind of like anything with the Indians. I want to always say this, I guess, because I just know. Like, I shouldn't even care about it. But I'll say this in this video anyway. Somebody's going to come on and say, the Indians don't believe that. I know an Indian, I know a Sioux, a Lakota, and they don't believe that. Well, yeah, there's as many people that dispute stuff in the Indian nations as there is of white people disputing whether we're in the short season or not. But it's a pretty well-known, I think, tradition among some Cherokees that there were white people here long, long before we claim in our history that the white people showed up. And there are accounts of this in some of the old newspapers. And you can dig around and find this stuff on the Library of Congress website, because they store a lot of the old newspapers on there, and you can scroll through and find some of this if you know what you're looking for and have the time and patience. So these original people that the Cherokee talk about eventually got nicknamed the Moon-Eyed People. I'm not sure if that's by the Cherokee people or the white people. You know, when our people say they came over, the English people, when they came over. So like it seems like from my reading that around 1770 or somewhere in there, the newspapers were talking about this some, and they called them the Moon-Eyed People is the name that they got, because they could not see very good during the day. So that's a pretty interesting thing, and that's a rabbit trail to go down in itself of who are these people that are white that cannot see very well during the daytime. I won't go down that road right now. But it's a fascinating story because it's just another little tack in my bulletin board. You know, the more dots you put on that wall, you know, this by itself is not that big of a deal. But when you start digging around and you start finding out, there's all kinds of accounts of what the Indians saying, no, there were white people here long before this lying history that we're being told You know, this narrative that we're given by this Satan's little season system, that Christopher Columbus came over and the colonists and all that stuff, and they were the first white people, I don't believe it at all. I much more believe what these other people, because it's not just one tribe. It's not just the Cherokee. It's all the Indian tribes that I see. I mean, all that I've looked at, but I haven't studied every Indian tribe. But, I mean, a lot of the main Indian tribes say there were white people here. Like, I think the Navajo or the Zuni tribe, they even say that they're part of there were the white people who were their brothers who went away, you know? So I'm starting to where it's like, no, that just fits the whole narrative all into all the bigger picture of stuff, much more than the narrative that we're given by our history books. So I'm kind of rambling on here. But so these people were there, and they said that so there's ruins around like Georgia in that area in the south and all along Appalachia, there's ruins, and a lot of them have been destroyed. Our government has went in and destroyed them. And I think that that's a lot of what's going on, and then they hide them. I'll do some further stuff on that. There is a really well-known area that there is a pyramid, right? And it's all overgrown. It's in, I think, Georgia. I have a couple people sitting here listening to me, but they don't want to be on camera. I'd like to ask them, because one of them would probably tell me where it's at. But can you nod your head? Is that Georgia? You know that one that's in the wilderness? You know what I'm talking about? They don't remember. Anyway, it's in Georgia. And get this. So this is ties into my whole wilderness thing. If you've watched some of my other videos about the millions of acres out here in the West that are all locked up and they're roadless. Like, what? That does not fit the narrative of our government, to just have all this wilderness area that they don't access and use for anything. It's hiding stuff. It's hiding stuff. And this thing down in Georgia is an old ancient pyramid, and somebody found it. I mean, the Indians knew about it. The local people knew about it. And then somebody got onto it that had money. And what happened was they wanted to go in and film it and research it, right? And they wanted to map it with those sonic underground sensors that can map over the ground and stuff and see what's down there. And the Forest Service was like, no, I'm sorry, you can't go out there because it's in the wilderness area. And if I remember right, like, this is like me remembering, I haven't looked at it in a while, so this might all not be exact, but like, it was in a wilderness area, and they're like, no, I'm sorry, you have to have a permit to go out in that area. It's locked off, right? It's in the wilderness and you can't go out there without a permit. And then they said, okay, well, what do we need to do to get a permit? And as soon as they found out these people were going into that area to look for this pyramid, they're like, no, I'm sorry, you can't have a permit. So they totally would not let them go out there. Well, these people had the money. Well, they ended up hiring a plane. And so they flew over the area and mapped it from above. And it shows all that there's a pyramid there above the ground. And it's just all overgrown. So you don't see it really. Like, if you're just flying over and you're not looking for it, you don't see it. But once you see it's there and you know what you're looking for, you go, oh my gosh, that's a pyramid. So these things are still here. They're still in Montana. Just they're not really accessible, is what I believe. There's like the Sage Wall in Montana. And the only reason like that's known about is because it's on private property. Like, so some private property owner has it. But I think that there's a lot of stuff out in the wilderness areas that, you know, it'll take you 5 days to hike to with a backpack. And then you got to know where to look and what you're looking for to kind of find it. You know what I mean? But the ancient people, the Indian oral history, they know about this stuff, and because it was sacred to them. And it's fascinating. And so back to the story of the Moon-Eyed People, the Cherokee claim that these white people that were here before them were the people who built a lot of these structures. Like, this is the Cherokee tradition. It's like, no, those ruins are not built by us. Those were built by the white people that were here before us. Like, think about that. Does that tie into the Millennial Kingdom or what? Or I mean, I don't know, but it ties into something that ain't the story we get in history books. Okay? So, And eventually the Cherokee say they ended up having problems with these Moon-Eyed people, the white Moon-Eyed people. So they ended up, the Cherokee expelled them and pushed them out of the area. And I don't, I can go into more detail if people want to hear about that, or you can look it up yourself. Now the other thing is, Thomas Jefferson. People probably know, if you've looked into this, that Thomas Jefferson, if you start looking around and don't look into the official story of Lewis and Clark, but dig around and read between the lines, Thomas Jefferson was really fascinated with this idea that there were white people out here. There were white, quote, white Indians out here in the West. And he wanted to find them. And so that was part of what his big thing of the Lewis and Clark expedition was. I think Thomas Jefferson was like, hey, what's left of the Millennial Kingdom? He knew there were ruins out here. They knew, the people coming in, taking over, knew that there was stuff out here. And they didn't know to what extent that civilization still existed. And that's what Lewis and Clark were coming out to find. And if you look around, you will find that Thomas Jefferson was looking for and fascinated with trying to find these blue-eyed Indians out west. And back to my, it ties in with James Adair, which I told you about in one of my other videos, one of my unfiltered videos about him. James Adair, while he was here and lived with the Indians out, the Eastern Indians, for 40 years as a missionary. Up until 1775. So he was like 1730, 1740, all the way up till 1775. So before this country was America, he was living with the Indians, and he wrote about thinking that these Indians were descendants of, or knew Hebrew, the 12 tribes, the lost tribes of Israel stuff. Like they had all these Hebrew artifacts and stuff that didn't fit the narrative that he was being told, that the general population was being told. And I'm guessing that from looking at the time frame of reading those other things, well, that fits the time frame of Thomas Jefferson. So Thomas Jefferson was probably hearing this stuff and reading it and being like, wow, I want to find these people. And so there's a narrative of that there was a tribe of white people living out in North Dakota by where Lewis and Clark found the Mandans. Okay, so when Lewis and Clark found the Mandans, he said they were half white, half Indian, half white people. And like that whole, when you read about even just the historical account from what the history tells you, what Lewis and Clark said about them, they were very civilized. Lewis and Clark lived with them for the whole winter, that first winter when they were coming out here. And there are accounts by people still living today from North Dakota area that say, oh yeah, I grew up hearing all these stories. Like it was just nothing surprising. The Indian people were like, the natives out there were like, yeah, there was white people here before, and they built these structures. And you go, well, where are the structures now? Well, a lot of the structures are destroyed now because somebody came in, like I would say our government, and destroyed some of them. But some of them are still around, and there's ruins of them, and there's accounts of them in the old newspaper, accounts of the old things before they got destroyed. And there's a quote. Let me pull it up here quick if I do. I have my laptop sitting here. So check this out. Okay, so this is from a newspaper article titled from 1771. And it says, it's reported a new nation of white people had been discovered about 2,000 miles to the west of the Appalachians, acquainted with the principles of Christian religion, and they are extremely courteous and civilized. Okay, that's 1771, a newspaper from 1771. It's called the Pennsylvania Packet newspaper. Like, when I see this stuff, I'm like, what? Like, let me read that again. This is from the Pennsylvania Packet newspaper, 1771. It is reported that a new nation of white people has been discovered about 2,000 miles to the west of the Appalachians. They are acquainted with the principles of Christian religion, and they are extremely courteous and civilized. Well, that's not the narrative that I was taught in school. It ain't what I saw in them movies with John Wayne. Alright, this video is probably like 20 minutes long. How long am I at? Oh, 13. It's not as bad as I thought. These are fascinating things to me. And I mean, these are just two examples. Two examples, and it's just like, there's a lot of people around that when you talk to them, if you search out the right people, like, they won't talk about it openly. Because they don't want to be, you know, if they talk about openly, people say, oh, that's superstition, that's some mystic, old-time nonsense that you heard. That isn't true. You're crazy to believe that. But if you find the right people, or you approach them the right way and ask them about stuff, I mean, you find people that are 80 years old, and you say, hey, what was it like growing up back here in Montana? And you talk to them a little bit, and you just listen and go, oh, well, that's really interesting. They'll kind of open up to you, and you can ask them stuff and get surprising answers. I probably shouldn't go down this trail on this other thing of a topic of, there's this tower, this big, huge smokestack in Hamilton, Montana, and nobody knows where the thing came from. I mean, it's been there forever, as long as anybody remembers. And there's stories of where it came from, but there's nothing that I've found that's like makes any sense, or it's just like, oh, well, this person says this is what it's from. You know what I mean? And I talked, it wasn't me, it was my daughters, talked to this older lady, and she's like later 80s, is that right? Later 80s, her husband's in the 90s, and she grew up, was born here in this area. So she dates back a while, right? And they started asking her what she knew of this smokestack. I mean, the smokestack is like, I don't know, 4 stories tall. I mean, it's a huge smokestack. I mean, the diameter of the thing is like, I don't know, it's like 15 feet in diameter. Something you'd see on a huge factory, right? And they just were like, hey, what do you remember about that smokestack, or something like that, you know? And she started saying, oh, and gave them a story. And it's not the story that anybody in the official stuff is telling us. And you know, it's just crazy, the stuff you find out. This is just like a rambling video. I'm going all over the place. But the more I find out, the more I just like, no, I don't believe anything at all hardly about the official narrative and history we're told. Because the more you find out, and then that's easier for you to see the little breadcrumbs and ask somebody a little bit about something, and ask it in the right way, and they'll go, oh, this guy isn't going to say I'm crazy. Okay, I'll tell him a little bit. And then they tell you, and you go like, oh, that's interesting. Then they open up and tell you more. And there's stories that I've heard of. There's an area that I went to. I didn't hike down into it. It's called the Frank Church Wilderness of No Return. Oh, quite a name, right? And I mean, it is a huge, millions of acres of roadless area. There's like one main road that goes through it. And there is people that say way back, way off, like backpack for 3 days into that area, and you will find like remnants of a structure that's cement, like cement bricks or big rocks, like that look like they're like poured cement type from a long time ago. And everybody's like trying to figure out, like, because they're talking to the Forest Service and like, wait, hey, how did this happen? Like, how did they get this stuff out here? And the Forest Service knows nothing about it. They're not going to say nothing. They're like, we don't know anything about it. You guys are all crazy. We don't want to talk about it. And, you know, you look into the official thing. Okay, well, could it have been helicoptered in there? But this stuff is there from before there was helicopters, right? You know, I look into this. I'm like, okay, well, they could have flown that concrete in back there. They could have packed it in on mules and stuff. But when you look at how much is there, I mean, the stories just don't add up. it's weird stuff, man. These things that are back in the wilderness area, and you like nobody can really goes back there to see them because it takes such effort to get in there. And then when you do see them, you don't really want to talk about it. I think, like, to some extent. Would you think that? I'm looking at the people sitting here. Yeah, they're like, yeah, because you don't want to make waves. But I'm ready to start making a little bit of waves because I'm on YouTube telling about this. And I like being on here doing this channel. I was like, okay, well, wait a minute. Now, do I really want to put my face on YouTube? Because if somebody sees this that knows me, they're going to be like, oh man, he's a nut. But that's how it is. So I'm on here for a little while anyway. I might, all of a sudden, they threaten to lock me up and I'll take this channel down. So get the information while you can. All right, I'll talk to you guys later.
This is Echo Pass Outpost checking in from the edge of the map. If you can hear this signal, you can still escape the Matrix.